I am kneeling on a mat of woven straw, the scent of fresh cedar and incense thick in the air. But all I can feel is the cold, coarse texture of the white silk kimono against my skin. The color of death. The color of a man who has already ceased to exist. In this room, the silence is a physical weight, pressing against my eardrums until the only sound left in the world is the steady, rhythmic scrape of a whetstone in the corner. That is my second, the man who will end my life preparing the blade. In the era of the Great Peace, we samurai have become bureaucrats and poets. But today, I am being pulled back into the ancient, bloody marrow of my ancestors. The sun is beginning to dip behind the castle walls, casting long, jagged shadows across the gravel courtyard. To anyone else, it is a beautiful evening in 17th century Edo. To me, it is the last time I will ever see the light. I reach out, my fingers trembling only slightly, and touch the edge of the small wooden table in front of me. On it rests a sheet of rice paper, a brush, and an inkstone. I am expected to write a poem. This is the ultimate contradiction of my class. I must prove my mastery of the arts at the very moment I prepare for the most brutal of ends. The system demands that my final breath be a refined one, a testament to a life of discipline that is now being discarded by the very Lord I swore to protect. My hand hovers over the ink. The black liquid is dark and deep, a mirror reflecting a face I no longer recognize as my own. I have spent 20 years wearing the two swords of my station, walking the halls of power with my chin high. Yet here I am, reduced to a single room and a single choice. The rules of my world are absolute. To live in shame is a fate far worse than the edge of a blade, or so the elders have whispered since I was old enough to hold a wooden practice sword. I dip the brush. The bristles are soft, almost sensual, a jarring contrast to the violence that awaits. I am not just a man dying. I am a role being fulfilled. I am the physical manifestation of a code that values the how of a death far more than the why of a life. As the first drop of ink touches the paper, I realize that the silk I wear isn't just a garment. It is a shroud, and I have been weaving it since the day I took my first oath. The brush clicks against the side of the stone, the final character of my death poem drying into the grain of the paper. My poem speaks of cherry blossoms falling in a spring wind, a tired cliché perhaps, but in this moment, the fragility of the petal feels less like art and more like a physical warning. I set the brush down and look at the short sword, the wakizashi, resting on the stand beside me. It is wrapped in white paper, leaving only the tip of the blade exposed. In my world, the sword is not just a weapon, it is my soul, my social rank, and now it is my executioner. Most people think of the samurai as warriors of the open field, but here in the Edo period, the battlefield has moved into these quiet, wood-paneled rooms. The system has become a machine of manners and precise movements, where a single slip of the tongue or a failed duty leads here. I remember my father teaching me how to draw this very blade when I was 7. He didn't teach me how to kill an enemy first. He taught me how to hold it so that I wouldn't cut my own fingers. The irony is not lost on me now as I prepare to use it for exactly that. To open my own flesh and prove that I possess a sincerity that my words alone could never convey. I reach for the kimono's hem, pulling the heavy silk downward to expose my midsection. The air in the room is cooler than I expected, the draft from the open shoji screen prickling my skin. Behind me, I hear the shift of fabric. That is my Kai Shokunin, my second. He is a friend, A man I have shared sake with 100 times, yet his duty today is to wait for the exact moment of my greatest agony. If he strikes too early, I am denied my honor. If he strikes too late, I suffer like a common dog. He stands with his feet planted wide, his own long sword held at a specific angle, just behind my neck, ready to sever the spine but leave a flap of skin so my head does not roll across the floor. Even in decapitation, there must be decorum. A head rolling like a fallen fruit is considered unsightly, a failure of the seconds technique. I stare at the blade on the table. I have to reach out and take it. I have to pull it toward me. The weight of the steel feels immense, as if it carries the expectations of every ancestor whose name I bear. If I hesitate, the witnesses sitting in the shadows will report my cowardice to the Shogunate. My family's lands will be seized. My sons will become ronin, masterless wanderers begging for scraps in the mud. My death is the currency I am using to buy their future. I wrap my hand around the white-papered hilt, the texture dry and certain. Every muscle in my forearm is screaming to let go, to run, to scream against the absurdity of a world that demands a man disembowel himself for the sake of a bureaucratic error. But I am a samurai. And in this era, our only remaining power is the power to choose how we disappear. I place the blade against the left side of my abdomen. The steel is colder than the air, a piercing shock that makes my breath hitch in my throat. In the textbooks and the romantic woodblock prints, this moment is portrayed as a flash of glorious light, a hero returning to the stars. But the reality is the smell of my own sweat and the sound of a distant crow cawing from a pine tree in the garden. My role is not just to die. It is to follow a manual written by men who haven't felt a blade in decades. To my left, 3 witnesses sit on their heels, their faces like stone masks. They are the inspectors, sent by the Shogunate to ensure the ritual is performed with the precise level of agony required to wash away my offense. My offense was simple. I drew my sword within the palace walls to defend a friend's name. In the warring states of our grandfathers, that would have been a deed of loyalty. But in this modern Edo, we are no longer warriors. We are the gears of a massive, frozen clock. The law says no blood shall be spilled in the presence of the shogun. And so, to balance the scales, I must spill all of mine here. I press the point in. It does not slide in easily like it does in the theater. The skin resists. The muscle bunches. There is a moment of blinding, white-hot heat that radiates from the puncture, a sensation so intense it feels like I am being burned from the inside out. I must not scream. I must not even grimace. The etiquette of Seppuku dictates that the face must remain calm, a serene facade over a ruined interior. I begin to pull the blade across, moving from left to right. Every inch feels like a mile. I can feel the different layers of myself being unmade. The skin, the fat, the abdominal wall. It is a slow, methodical destruction of the vessel that once carried my name. I look down and see the white silk of my kimono beginning to bloom with a deep, heavy crimson. The red is spreading with a terrifying speed, soaking into the fabric, making it heavy and warm. This is the material truth of the samurai code. It is a system that consumes its most loyal servants to prove that its rules still have teeth. I am 32 years old. I have a daughter who is learning to play the koto. I have a wife who is currently sitting in another room, forbidden from seeing me, forced to listen to the silence of my departure. The blade reaches the center of my stomach. Now comes the turn, the upward stroke that is meant to ensure the wound is fatal. My vision is beginning to fray at the edges, the room tilting slightly, as my blood pours onto the straw mat. I feel the shadow of my second looming larger behind me. He is waiting for the sign. He is waiting for me to lean my neck forward. The final signal that I can no longer endure the sincerity of my pain. But I wait. I want to see the red reach the edge of the mat first. I want to hold on to the world for just one more second, even if that world is nothing but a burning ache and the sound of my own failing heart. The room is beginning to swim in a haze of gray and gold. I can feel the heat of the charcoal brazier nearby, but my extremities are turning to ice. This is the physical reality of blood loss, the slow retreat of the spirit from the fingers, the toes, and finally, the heart. But as my body weakens, the weight of the system around me only grows heavier, more oppressive. I look up at the high ceiling of the hall, the dark cedar beams carved with the crest of my clan. That crest is why I am here. In the Tokugawa era, we are not individuals. We are merely temporary vessels for a family name that must remain untainted at any cost. If I had chosen to live, if I had fled into the night to become a nameless wanderer, that crest would have been stripped from every gate, every kimono, and every grave of my ancestors. The bureaucracy of the shogunate doesn't just punish the man, it erases the lineage. I think of my brother, who serves as a minor clerk in the rice granaries. Because I am finishing this stroke, because I am dying correctly, he will keep his position. He will be able to provide for our mother. He will be able to marry well. The blood pooling on this mat is the ink that signs his safety warrant. It is a grotesque trade, flesh for social stability. But it is the only trade this world allows us to make. I can hear the soft rustle of the witnesses' silk robes as they lean forward, their eyes scanning for any sign of a broken spirit. They are looking for a tremor in my hand or a tear in my eye. They are the auditors of my soul, ensuring that the samurai spirit is maintained for the sake of the social order. Even in my final moments, I am being managed, measured, and filed away. I feel a strange, detached pity for them. They are sitting there in their stiff, formal collars, trapped in the same rigid architecture of honor that is currently killing me. Tomorrow, they will return to their offices. They will write reports. They will drink tea and discuss the efficiency of my second strike. They are the living dead, moving through a world of ghosts and ancient rules that no longer serve anything but their own preservation. The blade has reached the far right. I have completed the cross. The pain has reached a plateau of dull, throbbing white noise, drowning out the world. I slowly, agonizingly, tilt my head forward, exposing the back of my neck to the cool air and the waiting steel. The shadows in the room seem to lengthen, stretching out like the hands of those who came before me, pulling me into the earth. I close my eyes. I don't think of the shogun or the code or the great peace. I think of the smell of rain on a dusty road and the weight of my daughter's hand in mine. I am ready for the shadow to fall. The world has narrowed to the point of a single needle. I feel the sudden, sharp bite of steel at the base of my skull. There is no sound, only a massive, vibrating thud that seems to echo through my teeth. And then, an impossible lightness. For a heartbeat, I am floating above the mat, looking down at the strange, slumped shape of a man in a red-stained white kimono. I see the kaishakunin lowering his blade with a practiced, steady hand, his face etched with a grim relief that he did not fail his friend. Then, the darkness arrives, not as a wall, but as a quiet closing of a door. But for you, the viewer, the story doesn't end with the falling of my head. In the Tokugawa Shogunate, the ritual of death was only the first step in a much larger bureaucratic process. Minutes after my body is removed, the cleaners arrive with buckets of water and stiff brushes to scrub the wood and replace the straw mats. They work in silence, erasing the physical evidence of my existence so the room can be prepared for the next official function. My death poem is collected, catalogued, and placed into a government file, a tiny piece of paper representing a human life sacrificed to maintain a social equilibrium. This is the hidden gear of the Pax Tokugawa, the long peace that lasted over 200 years. It was a peace built on the absolute suppression of the individual in favor of the role. We were a society of actors who had forgotten we were wearing masks. We spent our days obsessing over the height of a gate, the color of a sleeve, and the exact angle of a bow, all to mask the fact that our original purpose, warfare, had vanished. Without a war to fight, we turned the violence inward, creating a culture where sincerity was measured by how much pain a man could endure without flinching. The system required examples. It required the occasional ritualized suicide to remind every other samurai that their lives were not their own, but were properties of the state. My family will receive my ashes in a small wooden box, along with a formal document stating that my honor has been restored. My son will take my place in the registry. He will wear my long sword, the one I didn't use today, and he will walk the same stone corridors, bowing to the same officials. He will be told that his father was a hero of the code. But late at night, when he looks at that sword, he will wonder if the honor he inherited is a gift or a cage. He will realize that he is living in a world where the highest form of virtue is to be ready to disappear at a moment's notice. The blood has been scrubbed away, the incense has faded, and the sun has finally set over Edo. I am no longer a man. I am a cautionary tale, a line in a ledger, a ghost in the machine of a perfect, frozen order. The era of the samurai didn't end with a bang on a battlefield, but with a slow, suffocating realization that the world had moved on while they remained trapped in their rituals. By the time the 19th century arrived, the warrior class had become a hollow shell, debt-ridden, spiritually exhausted, and clinging to a code of honor that could no longer stop the arrival of modern steamships and cannons. Today, we look back at the image of the samurai with a sense of romantic awe, captivated by the discipline and the aesthetics of their sacrifice. We see the sharp lines of the armor and the gleam of the katana, but we rarely see the man behind the mask. The man kneeling on a white mat, terrified and trapped by a system he didn't create, but was forced to die for. The story of Seppuku is not a story of bravery. It is a story of the extreme lengths a society will go to preserve its own structure. It serves as a reminder that when a culture prizes the name over the person and the role over the human, the result is always a ritualized tragedy. We carry our own versions of these masks today, fulfilling roles in systems that demand our time, our identity, and our peace of mind. The question is, at what point does the cost of maintaining the image become too high to pay? In the end, the white silk wasn't just a garment for a ritual. It was a mirror reflecting the ultimate price of a life lived for someone else's rules.